Greetings, everyone. P. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. We've got in the house today another small crew. Summer's been tough for this show, but Chris Canzaneri's here. Ryan Scow is here. We may or may not see Lynn Versace. She said she was going to try and make it, but we shall see. So today's topic, another one requested by a viewer or two or three. What about those bands who have like ridiculously consistent and strong 5 albums in a row, a 5 album run of absolutely classic albums, right? Probably everybody can think of some. So what we've done is we've picked 5 bands each. We might have some honorable mentions at the end. We've got Nick's picks and Butch's picks for this as well. So we'll be, Ryan and I will be listing those off. And we'll each go one at a time. We'll pick one of our bands and list the 5 albums that we think make up that great 5 album run. And we were talking off camera, so we're trying to go with bands too who have released more than 5 albums in total, right? So we're not trying not to go for bands that may have only released 5 albums. So usually it's got to be a little bit longer than that. So Mr. Canzaneri will start us off tonight with his first selection of the evening.
All right. This is one I thought I would hold back because I figured everybody was going to be on. But since we've got a small crew, I'm just going to go ahead and go with the first 5 Maiden albums, which was an easy pick, easy way to start out. I think it's interesting how different, the first album is from the last in that list. The first Maiden album, The Power Slave, they changed a lot. A lot of different things happened. I think each album is also kind of unique in its own way. And I think they progressed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy pick. I love them all. And they're my favorite Maiden albums, period. So
you get too many arguments from too many other people, right? I mean, there probably could be some folks who like Somewhere in Time or Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, but I'd be hard pressed to have anybody pick any of those over the first 5. So
that's all I feel about it.
Yeah. Great choice to kick us all off. Ryan, what do you got?
Well, when I was talking about this with Nick, and I'll do his choice first. We're like, the most obvious choice in the world is Maiden, and him and myself agreed the first 7 albums are flawless. So we neither of us picked that because we're like, it's probably gonna be the first choice that someone picks, and there you go. So Nick's first choice is Iced Earth. I know we talked about them last week, but I do like the first 5 albums a lot, and that's the ones he picked. So the self-titled, Night of the Storm Rider, Burnt Offerings, Dark Saga, and Something Wicked This Way Comes. Basically their 90s work, because after that was Horror Show 2001, I think. So yeah, he's starting off with Iced Earth. Great choice. Just good solid speed thrash heavy metal in the 90s. And for my choice, I dug into the crypts here a little bit. I love a lot of metal from Spanish speaking countries, South America, Central America, Mexico, and I am going with my favorite band from a Spanish-speaking country ever. It's The Chasm from Mexico. They've lived in Chicago for many years now. But so this is a little obscure, but this is all their 90s albums up into the early 2000s. The first one is Death Cult for Eternity. Great album, and I'll talk about these in a second. Second one was Conjuration of the Spectral Empire. Now this is actually to specify, this is their 3rd album. This is their 4th album. So they put out a lot of albums. Procession to the Infraworld, their 5th album. I know a lot of people are like, who the fuck is that watching this? Then they were on Earache Records for a little while, and they did Dispel of Retribution, 2004, I think. And in 2009, they did Far-Seeing the Paranormal Abyssum. So the thing about these guys I think was cool was, when you talk about like progressive death metal with really good, like intricate guitar playing, usually it falls in a more progressive side of the house. You think of like what Death did a little later on, or bands like Gorguts or Atheist or Cynic, like that style, which is great. And I like all those bands. But these guys kind of thread the needle. They walk the razor's edge in playing this really intricate, really riffs intensive, longer compositions, 6, 7, 8, 9-minute songs that never goes towards like, it doesn't sound prog. It's just straight up thrashing, evil, old school death metal with really intricate, intense guitar playing. Their guitarist, Daniel Corchado, I don't know. I put him in my top 10 list of guitarists ever. The guy's just a riff monster. Writes album after album of this stuff and just song after song, and it's just brilliant. So it's cool. It's one of the rare bands that manages to really hit that vibe. It never sounds like Death or Cynic, or not that there's anything wrong with that, but these guys just like pure old school thrashing, headbanging death metal, very riff intensive, very technical, very ornate, very complex writing, lots of changes, mood changes and stuff. But they do it in a very old school way. So love the band. Like I said, I've been lucky to see them a couple times. One of my favorite bands ever. And they did albums after this that were awesome, and the albums before this were awesome. I think all their albums are awesome, but this shot of 5 is definitely my favorite. So that is my first choice. The Chasm from Mexico, later relocated to Chicago, Illinois.
I've never listened to them before.
You'll like them. I'll send you some stuff. Some of the earlier stuff's a little raw, a little like more, really kind of primitive. But some of the later stuff, the production's better. Yeah, you would definitely enjoy them. I'll send you a couple links.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, Butch's first pick is also Iron Maiden, first 5 albums. So, not surprising. My first choice, let's see. I pulled out a whole bunch here. So I'm going to go with the first 5 records from Lynyrd Skynyrd. Pronounced. Second helping. Nothing fancy. Give me back my bullets, and Street Survivors. What's cool about these albums is I don't think anybody would argue that if you're kind of talking about some of the great Southern rock albums of the 70s, you got to include all of these in that conversation. And no matter who was in the band, because they had lots of lineup changes throughout, the kind of the constant was always, those 2 original guitar players and Ronnie Van Zant. And just classic stuff. And Skynyrd's been around for a million years. The plane crash happened. They regrouped like a little less than a decade later, and they've been kind of going ever since. And just a great band that has released lots of really strong albums, tons of touring, but everybody kind of always goes back to the first 5. And to me, they're all drop dead classics. I often have a hard time like ranking one above the other, and I constantly am changing which one is my favorite, and they're all really, really great. So yeah, absolute classics of Southern rock or rock in general. First 5 from Lynyrd Skynyrd, my first pick for today. Back to Chris.
Those are the only real Lynyrd Skynyrd albums, in my opinion. But
you don't enjoy any of the other ones? Because I do, but
not a whole lot.
No,
not as much as those, for sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, those are
the only ones I like. Some of the other ones, but those are the only ones I really listen to with any like regularity.
Yeah. Oh, well, purist. Okay, so my next one, I was like, this is the first one I sort of thought, I could slide up one album or slide down one album. You're kind of grabbing a chunk in the middle of a band's output, and it's like, well, do I go down a little earlier to include that one album that was that came first, or do I want to include that one last album? So here I slotted towards the older material, and I went with the Scorpions' Virgin Killer through Blackout. Now,
interesting.
I wanted to get I could have included Love at First Sting. I could have included Entranced, but I went with Virgin Killer, Taken by Force, Love Drive, Animal Magnetism, Blackout, and another bunch of albums where they kind of changed. You started out with Uli. Uli's gone by the last one, and Matthias Jabs is or Yabs, or however you say it, firmly entrenched as an integral part of the band. And the music is definitely different. Still awesome. I think they transitioned from the stuff that nobody heard before, when we were little kids, and then to the stuff that everybody heard now and that they're remembered for. But I prefer pre-Love at First Sting Scorpions to post-Love at First Sting Scorpions for sure. So, but Love at First Sting could have been on that list. But
and I'm sure for a lot of people, I'm sure in the comments we're going to see that quite a bit for people who pick the Scorpions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on when you came in, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I came in with that Blackout, but still hearing the older stuff, getting to Tokyo Tapes pretty much. And like, well, where did these songs come from? I don't know any. What? They got all these other albums too? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And I think Taken by Force is one of my favorite albums, and it's kind of unique out of their whole catalog. So
that's my favorite one. I think maybe the heaviest one too, like just like almost most metal one, if you want to say. But
yeah,
I love that album.
Uli was incredible on that. Yeah,
Oh,
just
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Fucking
just
destroyed.
unreal. Yeah.
See, yeah, it's
So,
interesting because, like, for me, I have the Scorpions in my honorable mentions, and I, like you, came in with Blackout, but then I found, like, over the years that I went back further. So, like, on my honorable mentions list, I have Fly to the Rainbow, In Trance, Virgin Killer, Taken by Force, and Love Drive. And I left out Animal Magnetism and Blackout. But you can go either way because they're all really strong.
Albums.
In my opinion, I even like Lonesome Crow a lot. So for me, it's like Lonesome Crow up until maybe including Love at First Sting or not. I never listened to that album anymore. I used to like it a lot back in the day. But to me, kind of like Blackout and Back is like the cream of the Scorpions crop, in my opinion. And I have mixed opinions on some of those other 80s albums and everything after that. So that's a great choice because, yeah, they have a long line of really good albums. It just depends on, where you kind of sit with it. So cool.
Yep.
All right, Ryan, you and Nick, what do you got?
All right. Well, for Nick's choice, I have the displeasure of talking about albums I don't really know much about. Like, I can't add much commentary other than to list them. He's gonna shoot me when he sees this. But the band is the Swedish band Therion, like the symphonic, not really black metal. Well, they started kind of a little black and death metal, but they ended up just being like this full-blown symphonic band. And the early stuff is what I know, but that's not what he listed. So he went with starting in 1998, which is a little past the era that I'm familiar with. But the era that most people that are into the band, my understanding is this is the stuff that they consider like their essential, like core of their discography. So I'm gonna fuck these names up too. Voven from 1998, The Guile from 2000, Secret of the Runes from 2001, Lemuria from 2004, and Sirius B from 2004. So now that he sees it, he's gonna be like, "What? You don't know that stuff?" So we'll probably have a conversation about that. It might be something that I want to dig up too, but sitting here right now, that's just not albums that I'm really familiar with. So, but I'm also going to go over to Norway, over to Norway to one of the more famous black metal bands from Norway, and that is Darkthrone. So Darkthrone, if you're into black and old death metal, started off as a straight up death metal band. First album, Soulside Journey, 1991, and then they completely jettisoned that and decided to go black metal. One of the first bands to play like old school Norwegian black metal, starting with Blazing in Northern Sky, which I love it, but it sounds like what it is, which is a huge love letter to old Hellhammer and Celtic Frost and old Tom G. Warrior from Switzerland, but done super well with their own style, own little Norwegian flair. So this one probably my favorite of the bunch. But then moving right along, we have the also great Under a Funeral Moon from 1993. And then maybe their most infamous album, the one that got them the most attention, and I think the most love or hated, depending on where people fall on it, Transylvanian Hunger.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very raw, simple, kind of primitive sound, which didn't really grab me at first. When I was a teenager, I heard it, I'm like, but now it's grown on me a lot. I fucking love it. Music's funny like that. Moving right along, we have Panzerfaust from 1995, and finishing up with Total Death from 1997, which is not an album that most people care or give much of a fuck about. It seems overlooked, but I always thought it was pretty good. It's more of a hodgepodge of stuff they'd already done. They weren't really breaking any new ground here, but yeah, just good songwriting, good black metal. They knew what they were doing. They pulled it off well. So Darkthrone from Norway is my second choice. And they're one of those bands too. They got a lot of albums. I could have kept going, but they definitely have some, not I would say shit albums, but definitely dips that were coming up soon after this. So probably good we only did 5, because if we had to do any more, it would have been nixed them off the list. But
yeah,
solid 5 albums I listen to pretty regularly on a regular basis.
All right, Butch's next pick is UFO, starting with Phenomena, first album with Michael Schenker. And then we go on to Force It. If anybody hasn't gotten this new deluxe edition of Force It with a wonderful Live at the Record Plant in Los Angeles, California, 1975 bonus live album. Clutch, No Heavy Petting. And of course, Lights Out and Obsession. And of course, followed by the live album, right? So this is also one of my honorable mention picks as well. But yeah, I mean, this is Schenker's first go around in the band, and obviously the albums that spawned all those great songs for the wonderful, wonderful live album. Strangers in the Night. So that's Butch's second pick. Let's see. Where am I gonna go here? All right. You know what? I got a whole bunch to choose from. So I'm gonna go with Rush. So kind of like the Scorpions, Rush is a weird catalog to do this on because you literally can start anywhere. And with the possibility that Mr. Canzonieri also picked them, I'd be interested to see or maybe you did or maybe you didn't, where you would start. I struggled with where to start on this because I'm like, all right, well, the last album, the album number 5, has to be picked here. So I couldn't go too far back. So I decided to start with 2112. Could have done Caress of Steel or Fly By Night because I consider both of those classic, but then I couldn't include Moving Pictures. So then I was like, that.
It's a quandary because,
this is a hard one, right? Yeah. So I was like,
where do you start with these guys?
Where do you start? Right. Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, we got Farewell to Kings. And then we got Hemispheres. This is the most notorious and probably best loved Rush period here. Then obviously Permanent Waves, and then finishing off with Moving Pictures. But there's a lot. I mean, I love Signals too. We were only doing 5, and I kind of couldn't leave 2112 out. So I was like, well, do you go 2112 or Signals? I think there's really not a lot of question that 2112 has to be in this discussion. So so we got, obviously the really heavy progressive early period, and then the 2 albums where they're starting to kind of blend that with the more melodic, more accessible sounds that they would have going through the 80s. But all these are legendary albums, absolute classics, and the 5 great ones in a row. So back to Chris.
Okay, I didn't have that on my list, but I would have started Fly By Night and ended at Hemispheres. So
you would have. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting because I think that's a band where you're going to have a lot of different variations on.
Oh yeah,
those 5 classics are
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, my next one. This is a band I admit I have a huge hole in my knowledge of. And this period that I'm going to name, these 5 albums, I love these albums, and I've listened to almost nothing else by this band. And it's Behemoth, and I'm going from Satanica through the Apostasy, which includes, Dilemma 6, Zoskia Cultus, Demigod, and the Apostasy, starting with Satanica. Demigod's my favorite album by them. I think they've got 4 or 5 more albums before Satanica that I have not listened to. But
you're not missing too much. That's where they got. That's where they got good. Is in my opinion. It's not bad stuff, but it's different, and it's just I don't know. It never caught me the same.
Yeah, I think this run here, they were really just the production was there. The drum sounds are just so freaking powerful and heavy and freaking in your face. And I just think they rattled off 5 albums, and then I don't know what's after that. Evangelion, I think that's a pretty good album. And then the Satanist, they blew up with that album, and they've kind of never gone back to this kind of stuff. So this run right here, I think they put it all together. And I can't believe it's 15, 16 years ago now. This is it's been a while.
Crazy when you think about it, right? I remember when Demigod came out and they were headlining BB King's, and some of us were kind of like, really? Behemoth headlining? And all of a sudden, it's like they've been a pretty major player on the scene since then. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. And how how crazy brutal we thought that stuff was, back then. But probably maybe we thought that because they were a band that was getting a lot of attention, and this kind of music doesn't get that kind of attention. But and their albums have been really solid, in recent years. But I don't know if it equals that little run. That's a good choice. Yeah, cool. All right, Ryan, back to you.
All right, so for Nick's third choice, so he sent me this list, and I just noticed something that I didn't catch. So the band's Killing Joke, great English alternative industrial kind of very dark gothic band. Love them. But then I realized the 5 albums he picked are all newer albums, which are good albums, but kind of just caught me by surprise a little bit. So he started with the 2003, they're self-titled, went to 2006, Hosannas from the Basement of Hell, then Absolute Descent from 2010, MMX11. I'm terrible at translating Roman numerals here. I can read military time, no problem. Roman numerals. Yeah, that's 2012, and Pylon 2015. So yeah, all good stuff. But I just sent him a text like, oh, wow, you picked all new Killing Joke albums, where their 80s stuff to me is like Infamous, and essential and like really good, like dark gothic kind of, just one of those essential English bands from the period. So for my pick, I went with my favorite, just traditional, old school American heavy metal band. No fuss, no thrash, no doom, no black, just pure straight up heavy metal American band. And that band is, we've talked about them on the show before, Manila fucking Road. So they have a ton of albums. Some are definitely better than others. I don't think there's any total duds in there, but some of the newer ones can get a little. They can try your patience a little bit, go on a little too long. But the run of 5 albums they had in the mid '80s is, to me, like the topic of the show, just basically unstoppable. So starting in 1983 with Crystal Logic, which is because the earliest stuff where they started was a little, they started in the 70s. So this earliest stuff has more of a 70s rock, a little psychedelic, more proggy. They were kind of had a couple disparate elements coming together. But on this album is where they really pushed all that stuff aside and said, this is a straight up pure epic heavy metal, swords and sorcery, just great stuff, little double kick drums and stuff. But this album is essential. They followed that up with the equally good Open the Gates. I've seen them I saw them about 10 or 11 times while they were around, and they'd always throw quite a few songs on this album. And those were just some of the best highlights of the set. Moving right along, they got a little thrashier as they went, which was kind of cool. And they never lost like that epic kind of traditional vibe, but they definitely picked up the tempo. So then they got to the Deluge, which is another awesome album. Great artwork there too.
Oh yeah.
This is just really, just to me, this is just essential, classic heavy metal. And I know talking to a lot of people that were into metal in the 80s, you couldn't find this stuff because the label that came on, they were a little band from fuck off Wichita, Kansas. These albums came out on labels. They were like, probably, unless you lived around that area, you weren't going to find them. But thankfully, they've all been reissued multiple times, and they're pretty easy to get. So this stuff's really easy to track down now. You can hear it on YouTube, I'm sure Spotify and all that. So now it's no problem finding this stuff. It's moving right along. Also great Mystification, where they really hit like a real, almost perfect level between like very much like almost full on thrash, but still got that good epic commanding sensibility. And I'm going to say this is the weakest of the bunch, but I still think it's a really good album. It was Out of the Abyss. And this one's almost full thrash metal. It opens up with the song Whitechapel, which is just blazing speed, obviously, by Jack the Ripper, Whitechapel, London. Just blazing speed, but still, these guys were always phenomenal musicians. Mark Shelton is a fucking underrated guitarist. Never really got his due, but the dude could solo for days. Phenomenal lead guitarist. I put him up against pretty much whoever you'd want to name. Great rhythm player, great songwriter. His vocal, one of those blubbered, take it or leave it kind of deals. I like him, but had kind of a nasally tone, which is, but it's like the same thing. People have been fussing about King Diamond for a million years too. So just one of those things to me. But yeah, this run of 5 albums by Manila Road is just pure epic, perfect heavy metal. So that is my next choice.
That's a great choice. Yeah, it's funny. Back in the day when they were releasing all those albums in the 80s, you didn't find them anywhere. I mean, Rock Fantasy didn't even carry those albums to my knowledge. I don't remember seeing those anywhere.
They were all on these tiny, I don't remember the names of the labels, but it was real tiny labels. I'm sure the distribution was shit.
Yeah.
I guess unless you lived in the Midwest and like maybe you knew a store owner or something that knew the guys or, had that connection. Because I've talked to a lot of people and everybody's like, I never fucking heard of that back in the day.
Yeah.
It's great music, but yeah, it sucks that the band got, kind of like there was the Achilles, yes, you were on a record label, but it was a tiny label and it was a regional deal. That's it. So, but thankfully now, years went on, the internet helped to get the name out, labels reissued it. So now it's easy to get and easy to find. And they were at the point of playing some pretty, for a cult band, they were playing some pretty big festivals in Europe and people were just dying to see them. And that's cool that, years later, to kind of see a cool band like that to kind of get their due. So.
I'll have to ask Steve that one of these days because I definitely, I shopped at his store quite a bit in the 80s and I don't remember seeing those ever.
I don't think I've talked to a single person that had them back then. So yeah. I'd be surprised if he was like, I would be surprised if he said he had any of those albums.
All right. Butch's next pick, also one of my honorable mentions as well. Butch and I had a lot of the same picks. Thin Lizzy, starting with 1975's Fighting. Then going to Jailbreak, Johnny the Fox, Bad Reputation, and Black Rose. Again, another one of those bands that you maybe could go an album earlier, or you can go if you really like the Snowy White era, or if you want to start even later and include Thunder and Lightning, you could go a bunch of ways. I don't know. Personally, I think these ones that he mentioned here would be the ones that I would pick. Those are the five. Those other albums are great too, but these five, that's the shit right there.
I put them on my honorables, and that was the exact same five I picked.
Yeah.
Starting with Fighty. Because, yeah, those, like you said, the other ones are good, but those five are just perfect.
Yeah. All right. Here's a band that had to be mentioned. I almost wasn't going to pick them because we talk about them so much, and I'm sure if Chris Alla was here, I would have let him do this. But since he's not here today, they were the first band that came to mind here. So the band is Black Sabbath, and actually, for me, their first six are absolutely perfect. And then you could make an argument that, if you really like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, and of course there's Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules there. There's Born Again. You got this bunch of albums that are just absolutely great. But for me, it's got to be the first album, Paranoid, Master of Reality, Volume 4, and Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. This belongs as well, quite frankly, because it's almost like you can't talk about these and not include this. So this will be a shitty baker's dozen type of pick here. So you get
half dozen.
Yeah, you get 6 for the price of 5 here today. But I mean, yeah, all absolute classic Ozzy.
If Chris was on this show, we would have had to make him say you have to get every single copy that you have of the first 6 albums. So he'd be out there with like this fucking wheelbarrow full of like 1,000 CDs. Like, I got 300, take him a month and a half to put those all back.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's just nuts. We did a show on over the weekend, the Curse of the Collector show, and Jamie Laszlo was talking about how he's got like 9 copies of Heaven and Hell and like cassettes, a couple different cassettes, and a bunch of CD issues and a bunch of LPs and all sorts of stuff. It's just, yeah. I mean, I guess if you love an album that much,
start buying more of it.
Got to have at least 3 copies of it, right? Something like that.
I agree. I've got quite a few where I have at least 3 copies.
Yeah. So Black Sabbath, the first 5, we'll make it the first 6 because how can you leave Sabotage out? So, all right, Chris, back to you.
All right, this next one, going into forbidden territory. I'm going with Pantera, and I'm actually going to include some of those albums that never got widely released and are, were disowned by the band. But I'm starting with I Am the Night.
Okay.
Power metal, Cowboys from Hell, Vulgar Display of Power, and Far Beyond Driven. And I didn't do this just because I don't want to put Great Southern Trendkill on there, even though I don't care for that album as much as these others. But I honestly dig those first few Pantera albums, and especially I Am the Night and Power Metal. Power Metal is a fucking kick-ass album.
I like Power Metal, yeah.
Never leave it off a list of my favorite Pantera albums. And I Am the Night is great, too. I mean, that first vocalist, well, he wasn't the greatest guy ever, whatever, but Dime's solos on that album are just... And if you find it on YouTube and you find the right, version of it, somebody time-stamped all the solos, so you can just listen to those without having to listen to all the songs. Like super... Yeah. But, I mean, what a run. And in the 2 albums, from the early period, nobody owns them or has physical copies or whatever, but I love them, and I'm glad they're on YouTube because they kick serious ass. So.
Yeah. Great Southern Trendkill, I like. Reinventing the Steel is iffy. It's okay. Those last 2 are okay. Yeah, the 3 that came before it, obviously, they're great ones, but I like the early stuff. I think it's kind of cool. It's just different.
It's fun. Yeah, I warmed up to Great Southern Trendkill. I didn't like it years ago, but it just seemed kind of monotone and grating. But I don't know. I kind of warmed up to it over the years. But yeah, the last reinventing. Well, I said that last week too. I don't know. I just
yeah. Cool. Good choice. All right, Ryan, back to you.
All right. So for Nick's second pick is a band that I personally kind of waffle on. They're I'm going to say maybe the most beloved band from Norway, as far as I just never hear anybody say anything bad about them. I like them, but I kind of go between, they're good and really liking them. But we just saw them, me and Nick just saw them in Norway, and we saw them at Greek Hall and Opera Hall in Bergen, and they played their whole first album, which is the era I liked the most. And I'm talking about Enslaved. So Nick picked the first 5 Enslaved albums. So they played the first one, whose name I'm gonna just absolutely massacre here. I think it's an Icelandic. It's not even Norwegian. Vikerligen Veldi. Yep. Then it's Frost, which I can pronounce. Eld, Bloodheim, and Marjoram. So I like those albums. That's definitely my favorite era of the band. Some of the stuff after that, well, we won't even have that conversation because those aren't the albums we're talking about. But yeah, they played that first album. It was awesome. Unfortunately for them, they were followed up by 2 bands I like way more, which was Emperor and Mayhem. So, but they were the first band. So what can you do? But no, they sounded really good. And the last time I was in Norway, I saw them play the whole second album, Frost. So kind of 2 sets that I have fond memories of because that's the stuff I wanted to hear. And sometimes those play the whole album shows can kind of be, take it or leave it. But in this case, that's the stuff I really wanted to hear. So for the Enslaved to me was perfect. So that's Nick's second choice.
That's interesting because I like all those albums a lot, but I would have picked 3 later albums actually.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the universal sentiment and I like the later stuff too, but I've always found that I like it a lot less than it seems like everybody else, because everybody's like, this is the greatest, it usually gets picked for album of the year stuff. And I'm like, that's okay. That's just kind of my, how I approach that stuff. But, so my second choice, one of my favorite bands ever been, I don't talk about much on here. So let's go back to the early 80s. So arguably the first band to play like fast, heavy, dark, satanic, speed, black, whatever, it's probably Venom. I don't think anybody would disagree that Venom kickstarted that whole thing. And then soon after that, you had Celtic Frost, you had Bathory, you had Slayer, Merciful Fate, all these bands that everybody pretty much knows. But there was a band from Japan that started in 1982 that might be the second oldest or like one of the first bands to ever play this stuff that totally went under the radar because they've been a cult band the whole time. It took them a decade to put out an album. Then within a span of about 10 years, they put out a whole shitload of albums that all fucking ruled. And then since 2003, they put out 2 albums. So, but the band is Sabbat, not to be confused with the English Sabbat, who are also a great thrash band from wherever they are in England. But the Japanese band Sabbat. So they are just, and they play like, and if you like I said, Celtic Frost, Venom, Merciful Fate, it's that kind of stuff. It's very old school, early black metal, shit ton of thrash metal, because that's the background they came from, starting in 1982. But the first album wasn't until 1992. It was always on very small labels, and to this day, they've always been on tiny little labels, very cult band. But worldwide following. Every time I've seen them in Canada, Germany, America, crowds are crazy. So I'm going to start with their 4th album, Fetishism, which is a awesome fucking Japanese black metal album. And this stuff, I'm sure like 99% of the audience, like, I've never heard of these guys. Check these guys out. They're just great. A little raw, a little primitive, definitely don't, lower budgets on recordings. But the second one I'm picking is cool as shit because this band did a single 60-minute song on The Dwelling. This is 1996. So to play this kind of stuff, so Venom had a 20-something minute song, on At War with Satan, which is great. These guys said, fuck it, and did a 60-minute song, and it works. It doesn't get boring or repetitive. It really kind of just holds its own, and it's it's good headphones music because obviously you're not going to listen to that in a car if you're going on a long drive. But man, it sounds evil. It's great. It's like a horror movie and all the vibes they kind of conjure. Just great album. Moving right along is Charisma with a K, which is cool because at this point they started to incorporate some more of the traditional Japanese songwriting, instrumentation. So it gave that a little bit of a vibe to the music. All these albums I just love the fucking shit out of and listen to all the time. Then, I swapped them up. Sorry. Satana Sword from 2000. There's Gizal on the front. He's always wearing his. So when these guys play, he always comes out. He's the main guy. He's always wearing his little leather bikini. So if he's standing in front of you on the stage, there's not much separating you and little Gizal, That happened to me once in New York City when they played Webster Hall. That was an interesting show. And the crowd's obviously going fucking raging behind you, so you can smash forward the whole time, It's that kind of show. You can use your imagination. And then from 2003 was Carmag Massacre. So yeah, I'll just say, I know this band's pretty obscure, not well known, but yeah, if you like old Venom, old Motorhead, Merciful Fate, Celtic Frost, really early Slayer, like Show No Mercy, Haunting the Chapel, if any of that rings a bell, and you don't know Sabbat, fucking check out Sabbat, because these guys, it's not simple primitive stuff. It's really good, intricate, quality awesome heavy metal. A little raw, you know, production's a little raw, but just fucking awesome. They had albums after this and albums before this that were great, but like we said, these 5 to me are perfect. So I'm going with Sabbat from Japan.
I'm amazed they played at Webster Hall.
Yeah, I saw them there. I saw them in Montreal. I saw them some shithole in Brooklyn, like in 2004. I don't remember the place. And I saw them in Berlin, Germany, and it was awesome. So
cool.
And Texas, so I saw them in Houston, Texas. So I get around. I've seen these guys in different places, and they always put on a 10 out of 10 super high intensity show. Tons of energy.
Nice. All right, Butch's next pick is one that I thought about, but I had an issue with one of them, so I opted not to go with Van Halen. So you got the first Van Halen, Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, Fair Warning, and Diver Down. The reason I didn't pick them is because of Diver Down, which I personally don't see as a real classic album. The other 4 are without question, but Butch feels a little differently, so that's what Butch picked, which is cool. So there you have his. My next one is going to be Uriah Heap. I'm going to start with very, very, very heavy, very humble. The first album, Salisbury, second album, Look at Yourself, my personal favorite album, number 3. Number 4 is Demons and Wizard, regarded by many as their greatest album ever. And then The Magician's Birthday is number 5 in this particular line of excellent albums. You know, the couple that came after it, great as well. I'd even argue that all the ones they've released in recent memory are all absolutely amazing, and could be discussed here as well. But, you know, this is like the classic lineup, and this is, you know, what many people consider their greatest achievement. So yeah, right out of the gate, 5 amazing albums, kind of like what Sabbath did. Like you could even, you know, the album or 2 that came after the Magician's Birthday, you could count as well. But yeah, Uriah Heap, first 5 records. It's my next choice.
Once. I almost picked them, but I thought that you might pick them, and I wanted to, you know, pick some different stuff. So, but yeah, those albums are all flawless. Absolutely great. Great.
All right. What are we at? Final choice? Did we get there already? Yeah, I guess so, right?
Final choice.
All right. What do you got, Chris?
Well, I was going to go with Black Sabbath, but I also figured that somebody would have picked them by now. So I have a backup, and I'm going to go with Immortal and their albums from Battles in the North through Sons of Northern Darkness, including Blizzard Beasts, At the Heart of Winter, Damned in Black, in between those 2. I know people really loved their second album, Pure Holocaust. I could have put it on the list, but I wanted to have At the Heart of Winter and Sons of Northern Darkness on, because they're my 2 personal favorites. But you know, consistent. Even though, you know, I think they progressed a little from album to album. They certainly went from just another black metal band to something completely fucking unique by the end of that run. And I think Sons of Northern Darkness just fucking kicks all kinds of ass. I think the guitars sound great. The drums sound great. You know, let alone the whole creativity of deciding, you know, we're not going to sing about Satan and this and that. We're going to make up our whole, you know, our own world that is a hellish shithole filled with violence and death and whatever. Why be like everybody else? So
yeah, that's like Sons of Northern Darkness, like their pure thrash album. I love it. So good. Yeah, that's a great choice. I would have gone with the same ones. As much as, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I would have done.
Cool. I love all those albums too, but I do the first 2 are in fact, when we were just in Bergen, since you brought up Immortal, we found the first album, Diabolical. We found the castle where the artwork was taken. So here's the actual, I can show, there's the original cover from the first album, and it's in ruins, and there's Abbott blowing fucking, you know, black metal shit, blowing torch. So we found it. It was not hard to find, actually, outside of Bergen. It was like a 30-minute drive. So of course, being the idiots we are, we recreated it. There I am, you know, there's Nick and there's our other friend Ryan. So yeah, but yeah, those are great albums. So all right, anyways, going back to Nick's choices here. So Nick's number 1 choice, I'd like, it's going to be 1 or 2. I'm going to roll a dice on it. It's going to be Amorphous or Primordial, knowing Nick. So he picked Primordial. So some of the earlier albums, again, are great. One of those deals where you could have gone 2 albums back and been absolutely fine. He started at the Gathering Wilderness, which is where they kind of, I'm gonna say, consecrated their sound that they've been sticking with for a while now, a little darker, more somber. They got rid of the faster, slightly more black metal sound that they started with. They never were a black metal band, but the earlier stuff had more of a black metal tone. But by Gathering Wilderness, that was pretty much gone. Now you get this epic, powerful, heavy metal. Doesn't really sound like any other band on earth. Then to the Nameless Dead, which is my personal favorite. Redemption from 2011, For Greater Men from 2014, and Exile Among the Ruins from 2018. And these are 5 great albums to me. Definitely a situation where you could say they're all somewhat similar in tone and sound, but to me, it's just like more of a good thing. I never get tired of them. Alan's voice is awesome. We were lucky to meet him in Norway, hang out for a bit, and I know Nick was very happy at that. So just fucking great.
What's really interesting about Primordial is that I agree with you. A lot of those albums, especially the latter ones, have like a similar feel to them, but it's hard to explain like what that feel is, right? Like you said before, they're the early albums are very black metal-ish, but it's not really black metal.
Mm.
I never know how to describe like the Primordial albums. It's heavy metal, it's kind of doomy, it's epic.
They don't sound like anybody.
No, not at all.
Yeah, starting with the Gathering Wilderness, and it's like as soon as you hear it, it clicks. It's not like weird or experimental or avant-garde or anything. It's very direct and straightforward. But they just don't sound like another band,
No.
It's not really doomy, but it's often kind of slow and somber. But I don't know. I've heard them described to like My Dying Bride and Catatony and stuff, but I don't hear it. They really have way more of like an epic, like fist in the air vibe that those bands to me don't capture. And nothing against those bands, they're going for something different. But yeah, Primordial are kind of like their own beast. So, all right, for my number 1, there's only one choice for me because not only is it's my favorite run of 5 albums in metal or rock, but the progression this band did over these 5 albums is unparalleled. Just the little changes they made where that last album, the 5th album, sounds nothing like the first. It's their first 5 albums, but yet it's still identifiable as the same band. It's very unique progression, very one-of-a-kind band. Speaking of one-of-a-kind bands, and that band is Voivod, of course. So they start off in 1984 with War and Payne, which is kind of a mix of where the band came from. So you get a little old English hardcore like Discharge and GBH. But then there's a lot of little Slayer in there, Venom, Motorhead. And these guys, they were always big into, especially their drummer Away, who steered the ship a lot, was real big into prog rock. So like a lot of stuff like Camel and Van de Graaff Generator and stuff, that all kind of like was shoehorned in there too. And their guitarist Piggy, probably my favorite guitarist. I've heard this, I don't know how true this rumor is, but one of the ways he would make the band learn new stuff was they would have to learn songs, cover songs, but they would have to learn them backwards. I don't know how to fucking do that, but apparently that's what he made them do. Like, we're going to play the song, but we're going to play it backwards. And whether or not that's true, I don't know, but it's a great rumor. So going from this, they made the same transition that Slayer made, going from Show No Mercy to Haunting the Chapel, where first album, Show No Mercy, Lombardo had a single kick, and he abused the hell out of it and made great work of it. But on Haunting the Chapel, he put the double kick in, and immediately you hear that EP, and it's like a world of difference. Everything's 100 times faster, way more brutal. So Away did the same thing. So on their second album, Roar, from 1986, he brought the double kick in, and the stuff's way faster. It's way more thrash. Now it's like a fucking bulldozer. So they kind of shed some of those punk rock, Discharge, Motorhead vibes, and now it's just probably their most brutal album. Probably one of the most brutal albums of the 80s for a band that doesn't really get associated with that too much, but just a really fast, fucking violent, intense album. And then they did a hard left turn, 1987, put out Killing Technology, which is, put a gun to my head, probably my favorite. Pure thrash. They shed all of the rawness of the first 2. Now it's more refined, still totally out there, aliens, space, sci-fi, weird stuff, fucking awesome. Then they put out another album, which put a gun to my head on another day. Might be my favorite album on that day, Dimension Hatros, from 1988. Still very thrashy, but very proggy now. All kinds of weird influence coming in. Tribal drumming on the second track, very proggy at times. Still very violent. And then 1989, they do Nothing Face, which is, at this point, it's got a Pink Floyd cover, which they kill. And there's no thrash anymore. Now it's just like a weird kind of prog rock, almost. And after this, they went on to what I would call alternative metal with Angel Rat, which is still good. But these first 5 to me are, I I don't know. It's the best run of 5 albums in rock or metal. I listen to these all the time, and I just love the fuck out of this band. And I talk about them a lot on the show, so big surprise. But yeah, definitely Voivod.
I thought you were either going to go there or are you going to do the first 5 Slayer albums?
I thought about that. I really thought about putting Slayer in there because those albums are great too. So that'll be an honorable mention.
Yeah, that's in my honorable mention. So, all right, Butch's last choice. Here's a pretty cool one here. The Japanese band Anthem. You guys remember them?
No.
But
I'll look them up. So I picked a Japanese band.
They've been around since the early 80s. They've got 1 million albums. I remember them. They were like kind of contemporaries of Loudness back in the day. You know, they had like, I believe their early albums were all sung in Japanese. But Butch's 5 picks were released from 2001 to 2008. Butch basically said, this is going to surprise people. He goes, this band has never released a bad album, but I'm going to pick these 5 albums. So 2001, 7 Hills. We got Overload, Eternal Warrior, Immortal, and Black Empire. I haven't heard any of these albums, so I haven't listened to Anthem in, 35 years at least, probably more than that. So I would probably be interested in checking these guys. And interestingly enough, I think the album before 7 Hills, Graham Bonnet sang lead vocals on it. Go figure. Do you actually have an Anthem CD in your collection there?
I do not.
No.
No, but I'm going to check them out though, because now that you said Japanese, another Japanese band came to mind as an honorable mention. So,
Gotcha.
Moving on.
Cool. And my final pick today, again, because I picked Sabbath, I opted not to go with another band that I had sitting here because, again, we talk about them all the time. But I'm going to go with the first 5 albums from American prog rock legends, Kansas. First album, classic. Man, it's, you know, I still get occasionally people come up to me and it's like, Kansas, yeah, they're not a prog band. I'm like, what? In what universe? I mean, what, just because they had 1 or 2 hits, right?
Stupid universe. I don't want to live in that.
They're a prog band, man. Come on. I mean, this album is great. Got great epic tracks on here. Then you got the amazing Song for America. Title track is legendary. Lampline Symphony is great. Hymn to the Atman and Komodro. I mean, just classic stuff. And then Mask, which is proggy. It's heavy. You know, you got Child of Innocence on here, Icarus Born on Wings of Steel, just legendary stuff. And then, you know, their 2, you know, biggest sellers, obviously. We got Left Overture, absolute mandatory classic. Also has, you know, their amazing big magnum opus, right? As well as, of course, Carry On Wayward Son. And then Point of No Return, which has their other big hit, Dust in the Wind, but other killer stuff like the title track, Paradox, Lightning's Hand, you know, so many great songs on here. The instrumental, The Spider. For me, you also could have included the album that came after Point of No Return. Actually, the couple that came after are really, really good as well. But for me, their first 5 albums are just absolute perfection. And, you know, for US prog, it doesn't really get much better. Really, the first real US prog band, because prog is basically a British thing up until that point, or a European thing, I should say. But yeah, there you have it. Chris, any honorables?
Yeah. I kind of didn't include the first 5 Peter Gabriel albums. I didn't think he was hard rock or heavy metal, you know, not heavy enough. And then you got the first 5 Zeppelin albums. You know, you can't argue with those.
No.
And here's one for the engagement algorithm. You know, the first 5 Kiss albums, the best first 5 albums ever put out by anybody ever. We'll get some comments on that one. So,
hey, I have both Kiss and Led Zeppelin in my honorable mentions as well. You know, it's funny with the Zeppelin thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, how can you argue that, right?
They're all great.
They're all A. You know, you'd rank you'd grade each one as an A. You know,
right? Because every one of them up until Presence, and whether you can, you know, for me, like all the ones before that are, if they're not 5 out of 5 stars, they're 4.5 out of 5. Presence maybe is the one that's not quite a perfect album, and Into the Outdoor, I don't, you know, is even a little bit less than that. But
the first 5 are just perfect. Yeah, they're great fucking albums.
Yeah. And those first 5 Kiss albums, I mean, come on. It's, yeah.
You love them or you hate them. But
right.
I love them.
Usually it's split on this channel with people watching.
Yeah.
Love them and they hate them.
Really depends on your age too. I mean, there's like certain people who are from like a couple years older than you who are just like, fuck that fucking kid, that was for kids, and to people who are a couple years younger than me who missed it, and are like, well, who the hell is that? That was cheeseball shit by the time I was old enough to listen to music. But in that range from like your age to my age and probably a year or two older and younger in either direction, it just slammed us. It's like, yes, this is the stuff. This is the juice, man.
That's very true. Yeah, if you were like in 76 or 77, if you were anywhere from the ages of 8 to 11 or 12, you were probably into Kiss.
Yep.
Probably still kind of like them. But yeah,
it's the most, I got onto them, I wasn't, but I got onto them years later, but it's the most, in my experience, like the most age-focused band. Like, yeah, if you're in that age bracket, you love them. Like, to a man, everybody I've known loves them. Like, fuck yeah, I grew up with Kiss. Fuck, you don't like Kiss? Fuck off. But if you fall outside of that bracket, like, immediately it falls off. Like, oh, no, it's a good rock band, whatever someone wants to say. But in that bracket, it's like, you don't like Kiss? Fuck yourself,
On my face.
And I know there's lots of folks who like maybe more sophisticated forms of music and they hate Kiss. Like, I know, like, there's plenty of folks who are into, like, jazz or like prog, and that's all they listen to. To them, Kiss is just like,
it's just good fun rock and roll.
Yeah, you can't take them seriously at all. Yeah,
and that's all they never promised to be anything else. There's a fun rock band with a good stage.
You have fun with it, you don't. Yeah.
They never came out like, oh, we're King Crimson. We're gonna leave King Crimson to be in King Crimson. It's their thing. So they never. I don't know. They never pretended to be anything they weren't. So I can never get mad at them for that.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's like if I want to listen to complicated music, I go listen to complicated music. Sometimes I just want to listen to good old fashioned, rock and roll.
The haters all act like all you ever listen to is Kiss. It's like, oh, you fucking Kiss fans, blah blah. And it's like, I like other music too. Yeah. It's not like I'm like sitting there like, this is the best damn shit you ever heard, and nobody tops Kiss, and But I can certainly appreciate Kiss in every way possible that you can appreciate them.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have sung about cars more. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe 1 or 2 more songs about cars. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. All right, Ryan, you got any left?
Yeah. The number one that came to mind, which I probably should have picked, but I thought someone might pick it, was Motorhead, starting Overkill. So Overkill, Bomber, Ace of fucking Spades, Iron Fist, Another Perfect Day.
Yeah.
Well, the first one's obviously great, and I mean, to me, Motorhead never put out a bad album. So you can kind of drop the needle at any point in their discography. Some are much better than others. Some are just good, but they never sucked. Like you said, the first 5 Slayer are, to me, classic. First 5 Blue Oyster Cult albums are all great. Although that's another band where you can just keep on rolling because Blue Oyster Cult never really fucked up. Or some of the later, like much later on, is obviously not as good, but nothing up until like Fire Unknown Origin is anything less than fucking awesome to me. Since Japan came up several times, I reached over to my magic shelf here and pulled out the band Psy, who I love. So they got
I thought you were going to mention that.
Imaginary Sonicscape, which is like a weird psychedelic proggy black metal. Then they did Gallows Gallery, which nobody liked because it had weird clean vocals, but fuck them, I like it. Then they did, which was basically thrash metal with an orchestra, but not stupid, Hangman's Hymn. And then they did that again, but even weirder in Scenes from Hell. And then they just went full weird oddball again with Insomnophobia from whatever fucking year this was, 2012. So another great band. Another band I thought of just now, which I'm foolish for not including, was Bathory, who I love. But the first 5 Bathory albums, they started off kind of Venom-like, then it got darker, then they turned in pretty much the template for all black metal to follow. And then they said, fuck it, and became like a Viking metal band, with Bloodfire, Death, and Hammerheart, clean vocals and the whole 9. So they were great. And I had another one, but my brain just, as soon as it popped in, went in one ear, popped out the other. So it didn't stick around long enough for me to say. But yeah, that's all I got for now. Oh, Nick wanted me to pick one too, so I'm gonna go for Nick. He wanted going back over to Germany with Blind Guardian. So he picked same 5 I would have picked: Follow the Blind, 1989, Tales from 1992, Somewhere Far Beyond from 95, Imaginations from 96, and Nightfall from 98. So awesome German band. It's another band that later on I wasn't kind of into as much. Their newer albums kind of left me cold, but late 80s to the 90s, they were one of the best power metal bands on the planet.
Yeah.
If Rich Catino was here, I'm sure he'd agree with me.
He would absolutely do that. Yep. All right. So I opted not to include these guys in my top 5 for obvious reasons, because we talk about them a lot. But, we got to mention Sad Wings of Destiny, Sin After Sin, Stained Class, Hellbent for Leather, A Killing Machine, whatever it's called by you, and British Steel by Judas Priest. And what else I have on my list here? So a lot of the ones have been mentioned already, so I will skip over those. How about Aerosmith? Get Your Wings, Toys in the Attic, Rocks, Draw the Line, and Night in the Ruts. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago I might not have said them, but I personally think Draw the Line and Night in the Ruts are terrific albums, and Get Your Wings for me has really started rising up to one of my favorite Aerosmith albums, so I wanted to mention them. Ryan's favorite band, Queen, Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack, A Night in the Opera, and Day at the Races. Absolutely killer albums to start their career. You could, if you're not as much a fan of the earlier albums, you could probably even go a little bit further and include, some of the albums that came after that. Jethro Tull, Stand Up, Benefit, Aqualung, Thick as a Brick, and A Passion Play. Amazing. I almost picked these guys. Budgie.
I just thought of Budgie. I looked over and I saw, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They only had a whole bunch of good albums in a row.
Yeah, the first self-titled album, then Squawk, Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, In for the Kill, and Bandolier. Those are my favorite Budgie albums right there. Those are the first 5 they released, so why not? Let's see what else we got here. Got anything else?
ZZ Top. Just started.
Yeah.
First 5 ZZ Top. And the band I thought of and forgot, but now I remember again, was the first 5 Morbid Angel albums.
True.
I like all those.
Yeah,
but definitely the best Morbid Angel albums.
Yeah, Morbid Angel's a good choice. ZZ Top, how did I forget ZZ Top? I don't know. Pink Floyd too. And again, not counting soundtrack albums, Metal, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals in the Wall. Now, I'm not a big Wall fan, but I don't deny that it's a classic album.
It's iconic, yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. That's big. I had Elton John, Tumbleweed Connect. I mean, that's not really hard rock or metal, but I mean, he had a run of 5 albums that was ridiculous in the 70s. Genesis had a nice run. Moody Blues had a nice run. Journey, yes. Maybe another metal one. Symphony X, Divine Wings of Tragedy, Twilight on Olympus, 5 The Mythology Suite, The Odyssey, and Paradise Lost. All killer albums. So yeah, I think we got most of the stuff covered, but I'm sure there's others that we haven't. That's what we need you guys for, watching at home. So if there's other hard rock, metal, or rock bands that you feel had an impeccable 5 album run, put it down in the comments below. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Just a reminder, we've got coming up in just a little over a month, Sea of Tranquility Fall Fest at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, October 1st. We've got a full 12-hour day plan. Afternoon is going to be all panels. You get to see us Hudson Valley Squares folks. You get to see the In the Prague Seat folks. You get to see myself and Martin Popoff. Chris Caffrey will be in the house. Then the evening session, we've got all the music and a little bit of talk. I'm going to be chatting with Mr. Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash for a little bit. Then we've got Sonus Umbra, Epic Tantrum, Pat Travers Band, Vanilla Fudge, and Nectar. So it's going to be a fun-filled day with music, talk, all of the Sea of Tranquility folks, and you guys. So get your tickets now. Got the links below and all over the channel. You can find them anywhere, the Chance, box office, all that good stuff. So hope to see you guys there. And for Chris Canzaneri and Ryan Scow, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next week here on Hudson Valley Squares. Take care.